Welcome to the KidMin Podcast with Dr. Val and Dr. Virginia, where we talk about everything KidMin.
And pull back the curtain on some of the surprises and challenges in children's ministry that nobody prepares you for.
I'm Dr. Val, and together we have over 45 years of experience in children's ministry.
I'm Dr. Virginia. Valerie and I met over 10 years ago in our doctoral program at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. We are excited to share with you all the great stuff that we have picked up over the years. We want to minister to you, the children's minister.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Virginia and I have been doing a series on learning styles over the last few months. And so if maybe this is your first time listening to us, or maybe you've missed those episodes, we've been going through 8 different learning styles. And so we're going to be talking about one of those today. Just to give you a little bit of background in case you haven't caught any of these episodes, Dr. Howard Gardner came up with a theory of multiple intelligences. And basically what he was saying is that we all learn in very different ways. We all have individual learning styles that are our preferred way to learn. It's the way our brain thinks and processes most effectively. Now, when you listen to the different 8, as they're listed, a lot of times people will say, well, I feel like I learn in a lot of different ways. And we all do. We all can learn in all sorts of different ways. But basically, Dr. Gardner's theory was that we have all been created with a specific learning style in which we learn best. So the basic 8 learning styles that Dr. Gardner originally wrote about, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes, you're going to see the list be very different in different locations because people have added to it, they've taken away from it. Even Dr. Gardner switched it around a little bit over the years after he originally published the theory. But the basic 8 learning styles that we typically work with are visual. Those are our children that tend to learn better through sight, through what they see. There's kinesthetic, which is those kids that love to move and they like to have action and they like to play active games and to do active things. There is auditory, which is also known as like a musical intelligence, which is basically people who listen well, understand best through listening, through tempo, through rhythm. There's verbal learners. Those are the ones that love to talk and love to chat and like to be able to process things out loud. There are logical learners. Logical learners, they're inclined in a mathematical way. They tend to think through things logically and in sequence. There are relational learners. Those are the kids that love to work together in groups and work together to learn. They like to make friends. They're very social. There are natural learners, and these are the ones that love to learn outside. They love nature. They love plants. They love animals. And then the one that we're going to be talking about today are reflective learners. And reflective learning is also known as intrapersonal learning. And basically what that means is that these kids are very much in tune to their own emotions, to their own thoughts, and to their own feelings. And so we're going to talk a little bit about reflective learners today. If you are wondering, why are we spending so much time on this? Why are we going through each one individually? Why, would we take time to talk about this? Is that one of the things that I love that Dr. Gardner said was that everything worth learning can be taught in different ways. And the idea behind this is it gives us opportunities to create specific activities in the classroom that's going to help each individual child learn and process better. And so if we understand the learning styles, that gives us opportunities to make our classroom more exciting, more interesting, and just a better learning environment for the entire group.
And one of the funny things we've been sharing with Val before we started recording, this is something that my husband and I have been talking about. He is getting ready to apply for an EDD program, or he's in the process, has been in the process for months now. And as part of that, he's doing an entrance exam. And so I've been helping him prepare for his entrance exam. I'm like, this is fun for me because I get to be, pretend Christian education professor again.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we've been talking about is learning styles and Gardner's learning styles and all kinds of stuff. And even before this, my husband had the awareness that he was definitely more of a verbal processor. I am definitely more of a reflective processor, like we're talking about today.
Right.
And he is definitely more of a verbal processor. And it's funny because he'll be like, okay, I just need to talk about this so I can know what I think about this, and I'm the opposite as a much more reflective person. I'm like, no, I need to go think about this for 3 days and then I'll decide and then I'll
Right.
know
Then
what
you
I
can
think
talk
about
about
it.
it.
Yes. Yes.
I think God has a wonderful sense of humor in the way that he pairs us together with such opposites.
Yes.
Because it always
Yes.
can make challenges, but it gives you the opportunity to be able to step outside of your comfort zone, and he has to
Yes.
step outside of his comfort zone. So,
Yes. And learn how other people think and process and,
right,
learn how to work with that for sure.
right. Well, and that's one of the things that we've said over and over again, and that we're going to keep saying as we finish these up, is that there is not one learning style that is better than another.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to have opinions about what they think is better. And it's typically because the way you naturally learn tends to seem to be the best way to use, must be the best way for everybody else. And that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
There's not one learning style better than the other. The whole idea behind this is that God created all of us individually. We're
Mhm.
all very different, and we have different things that we like and different things that we're good at
Mhm.
and different ways that we process. And so one is not better than the other. It's just different. And as
Mhm.
educators, as teachers, we do need to be able to step outside of our comfort zone to meet
Mhm.
the needs of the student, because it's our
Amen.
responsibility to find the most effective ways to teach
Mhm.
concepts. And so the way we
Mhm.
do that is by knowing our students and knowing
Mhm.
what they relate to. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a kinesthetic learner do an activity that's verbal or logical or
Mhm.
relational. But it does mean that we want to have a variety of activities
Mhm.
available for our
Mhm.
kids so that they do have the opportunity to not only learn in a different style, but to learn in their more preferred style so that they feel seen and they can feel connected to the
Mhm.
classroom. And so that's why this is such an important thing. And it's why it's so important as you're looking, like, for example, when you receive your material that your children's minister is giving you, or that you are looking through the material that the publisher has provided for you, and you're choosing what's going to be done, because the material is always going to give you way more activities than you can do on a
Mhm.
Sunday morning. When you're
Mhm.
looking at your Bible study material, there's always going to be 6 or 7 activities, and those can't be
Mhm.
done within an hour.
Mhm.
But when you're looking at those activities, we tend to lean towards the activities that we think sound fun to us.
Mm.
And so as you learn
Yeah.
more about learning styles, as you learn more about multiple intelligences, you realize that you can't just pick and choose the activities that you think sound the most fun. You want to make sure that you're providing a wide variety of activities
Mhm.
so that all of the kids have the opportunity to become engaged in your classroom.
Yeah.
And so that means that sometimes you have to go, okay, I don't like that art activity so much, but maybe I need to do an art activity because
Mhm.
I haven't done one in a while. So you have to
Mhm.
really kind of think through your kids and what, personalities they have and what learning styles they have as you start to create as you plan your activities for that particular lesson. Well, let's talk a little bit about interpersonal or reflective children and some of the traits that you might see in these kids that might help you to
Mhm.
determine what type of learning style they have if they are a reflective learner. These are the kids that really do understand themselves well, and they understand their thoughts and their feelings well, because they have spent a lot of time thinking and processing, because that's just
Mhm.
naturally how they view life and how they see things. So these are the kids that you're going to see that enjoy spending time alone.
Mhm.
As teachers, I think it can sometimes be just that knee-jerk reaction that when you see a child alone that you think, oh, they're shy and they don't want to be alone, but they don't quite know what to do. Interpersonal kids, reflective learners, they can be social. It's not that they can't. It's just they just prefer to be alone sometimes because they need that personal time. And so you're
Yeah.
going to find those kids that just when they walk into the classroom, instead of necessarily going to a large group of kids that are playing a game, they're going to walk over to the books and pick up a book, or they're going to, do a more quiet activity. Just that's going to be where they naturally are drawn.
And it's funny because I'm also an only child, and so I kind of think and have said I think I was sort of built to be an only child because I could just go off and just entertain myself for hours at a time, and obviously I would enjoy playing with other kids, but I didn't need playmates. I would just go and do my own little thing. So sometimes I would go and visit my aunt at her house, and she would sort of joke, but maybe also kind of serious, like forget that I was there because I'd just be off quietly, like playing by myself somewhere. So I'd be like, oh, okay, there she is. Like,
right.
So,
well, that's what like we have two granddaughters, and our older one and I love to play games. We love to play board games. We love to, like that. And we love to, watch TV together. Like we like to do things together. Our younger granddaughter, I always feel bad because I want to, I ask her, obviously I said, well, what do you want to do? Let's do. She much prefers to get a book or to play a video game. She's just like, I'll sit here and do this while you guys, like she's just
go off
more
and do whatever.
of the reflective, like she just would rather kind of be on her own. So when you see kids, it's not like there's that inclination that I have to want to try to draw her in more, but honestly, she's much more happy to be able to do her own thing than for me to force her to play a board game with us, because that's just not her. It's not what she loves to do. It's not what she like, she would much rather sit and read her book or to play her video game. So it's just finding those kids. There are just those kids that enjoy that alone time and enjoy kind of doing things on their own. They tend to understand their emotions really well, so they can verbalize their emotions really well because they're very self-aware. And in general, they do think about deeper meanings in life and in situations. So they really do pick up on details that most kids might not notice because they have thought through deeper processes in their minds. And so a lot of reflective learners really do enjoy coming to church because they do enjoy spiritual practices, prayer and Bible study and reflecting on the deeper meaning in life is something that these learners really focus on. And there's a lot of that we do at church, having those moments of quiet prayer, having communion, doing those things that are very reflective, where you look, you kind of spend more time, thinking through and processing is something that they're going to be very good at. So they're going to enjoy those times in church where we have those activities.
And I'll say too, just in my own experience, and I was a little older, I was like in junior high, whenever I was exposed and taught about like reading my Bible and journaling. And I mean, that was something that I just like took to, like wildfire, that was very organic for me, and something that, I mean, it's done, since I was introduced to that as a, young teenager. It's something that I've done continually throughout my life, and still do today, that is a practice that I find super beneficial for my own spiritual life. So that started over 2 decades ago.
Right.
So,
See?
yes.
So I think church life in general really meets the needs of a reflective learner, because those are so many of our spiritual practices are things that are more introspective. And so that makes a big difference there. So reflective learners like to express their thoughts in creative ways. So it's like you said, a lot of these learners are writers. They enjoy writing. They enjoy thinking in journals and doing that. A lot of reflective learners are also very musical because they enjoy those singular activities. They might play the piano or play the violin or play an instrument where you're spending time on your own learning to hone a skill that is very emotional and that tends to bring that that very reflective kind of,
Mhm.
mindset when you see these musicians that are playing. So a lot of reflective learners do enjoy playing music or listening to music.
And again, just sort of as a kid growing up as a reflective person, I was very interested in creative things like you said, like creative writing and like arts and crafts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And one of the funny things that I think I don't know if funny is the right word, but unusual things maybe. Whenever I was a kid, one of the things that I was like, I don't want to say it was my greatest fear, but
Mhm.
like I always was like, I never want to grow up and lose my imagination. Like
Yeah.
as a kid, I consciously thought that whenever I grow up, I still want to be like imaginative and
Yes.
creative. I never want to lose my imagination. So, and I don't think I have. I think,
Right.
obviously as an adult, it finds very different applications.
Right.
But,
Right.
it's so funny that even as a kid, I never wanted to lose that sense of creativity,
Right.
that truly is how God created me. It's innate.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and I think that's a perfect example of how reflective learners understand their emotions better than
Mm.
a lot of children their age. The fact that you were very aware of that at a very young age meant that you were very in tuned with the way that you process and the way that you think, and it was a part of you that you also
Mm.
realized not everyone had. So it was that idea of, wait, if adults don't do this, then maybe you do lose it as you get older, and I don't want to lose
Yeah.
that. So, and that's
Yeah.
exactly like leads really well into the next thought, is because reflective learners are so very self-aware, they analyze situations well
Mm.
because they take
Mhm.
in what they observe, and they really can look at somebody. They're going to be the kids that notice someone's hurt, or someone's
Mm.
feelings are hurt, or someone's struggling, or someone's sad. They're going to really recognize that faster than most people because they are so very aware of what they're seeing and how people are processing their emotions. And so I think that that's an amazing trait that you will see with these learners. One thing about reflective learners that's really important for teachers to be aware of is that they do like to do things in their own time. Because they have to process, they have their own way of looking at situations, looking at activities, looking at the world around them. They're kind of on their own timetable than everyone else around them.
Yeah, much to the frustration of adults often. So, yes, I was definitely the very like slow moving kid. The same aunt who would forget I was around would also give me the nickname Forrest, because to encourage me to try to move faster from Forrest Gump, she would say, "Run, Forrest, run!"
And
So, I'd just be ambling along at my own pace.
yeah. Well, and they're often in their own world because they are thinking
Yeah,
and processing. And so when they see
yeah,
something,
yeah.
it's not the same as like if you have a visual learner that sees something and can kind of process through their visual.
Mhm.
When a reflective learner sees the visual, then they have to process it through their
Mhm,
mind in
mhm,
reflection. So it takes them a little bit longer, not in a bad way, just in a more
mhm.
thoughtful and a deeper way, because they are taking what they see and they're connecting it now to things that they remember and how they feel and all of this. So it just takes them a little bit longer to think through and process than others because
Ah.
they're doing it more deeply, not that they're doing it slower. It's just they're doing it in a deeper way. So it's taking them longer.
It's like, "Oh, there's a butterfly on a flower. Let me stop and look at it. Let me think about other butterflies I've seen. Oh, and I saw this thing about butterflies and how they're pollinators and how all that works." And like, just sitting there just mulling and ruminating on a butterfly on a
Yes.
flower,
Yes.
and you're like, "Get on, we
All
gotta
of
go
these
inside. We gotta come off the playground."
all of these little trains are moving on all of these little tracks to all the things that they know about it. And so it just takes them a little bit more time. And
Mhm.
so reflective learners can dialogue with themselves well. So there is an inter dialogue that goes along with everything that they're hearing and everything that they're seeing, so that they almost are helping themselves process. Where a verbal learner is going to need to talk to somebody else to process, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
because these kids are dialoguing with themselves through it. So they're having the conversation, they're just having it with themselves in their minds. And so that's how they are going to process and how they're going to think through. So they're very independent. It's like you said earlier, these are our kids that can be on their own and they don't mind it. They can do things independently and they don't mind doing it on their own because they are processing and thinking through it differently. They might be slow to build relationships with, and that's just because they're not going to be the ones that are going to initiate necessarily, because they don't mind being on their own and they know how to handle things on their own. So they don't have that need to build the relationships really quickly. So they may not take the initiative steps to be able to become part of a group or to get to know you well. So this is where, as the teacher, you really have to try to find things that child is interested in, and you need to take the steps to make the connection. Because once you start talking about things that child enjoys, they're going to warm up to you and start talking to you more, and they're going to let you in because, again, they are very self-aware. So they know their emotions and their feelings and what they think about things, and they want to share that. But it just sometimes takes your initiative to get that started because they are not necessarily going to step out on their own to do that.
We can both talk about the butterfly and pollinators and how all that works.
Yes, they are glad to tell you everything that they've learned about it, but you might just have to ask them first.
Yes, yes.
We've already kind of mentioned about how that they do things in their own time, so they really need to work at their own pace. So we need to give these kids time to process. If you're going to ask them a question, you might need to have that quiet pause a little bit longer with them than others. Again, not because they don't know the answer to the question, but they're just thinking through it and processing the answer, and they're going to give you a more thoughtful answer than a lot of kids. They're not just going to like blurt out the first thing that they're thinking of. They want to really take time to think about their answer to you and exactly how they're going to answer. So that's really important. The other thing that's really important to remember as the teacher in the classroom is that we cannot use these children to calm or quiet other children down. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but I've talked with teachers a lot over the years that will think, okay, Sally is a reflective learner. Billy is a kinesthetic learner or a verbal learner. And so I'm going to put Sally next to Billy so that Sally can keep him calm and quieter. They are not going to keep Billy calmer or quieter. What's going to happen is that Billy is going to naturally need to have that interaction because he's a verbal learner. And so he's going to need to talk things through, where Sally needs to think things through. So it's going to be much more detrimental to Sally than helpful for Billy.
Well, and it's not Sally's responsibility to keep Billy quiet. Like that's
right.
She's a kid. Like that's not her responsibility or her role. And Billy doesn't need to be disruptive, but also he still needs his need of communication and learning verbally or learning relationally. He still needs that need met. So, I mean, it's not easy to balance and be thoughtful about meeting the needs of a lot of very different kids. But again, that's why we do a lot of different activities to give opportunities for that variety of needs to be met.
Right, right. And that's really why we're taking time to go through these learning styles, is because it helps us be able to think about what kinds of activities can we provide for these kids that's going to be most beneficial to them to help them learn. But it also exposes the other kids to different learning styles as well. So you get the best of both worlds with this. But I feel like that sometimes it's really hard for us to meet the needs of the reflective learners because we want our classrooms to be active and we want to think about games and we want to think about these activities that are big and bounding and, moving. And so sometimes we don't really spend enough time thinking about what are some activities that we can do that are going to help those reflective
Mhm.
learners be able to be successful in our classroom as well.
Mhm.
So when you're thinking about activities that are going to meet the needs of reflective learners, we thought we would just go over just a few different things that you can incorporate really easily into your lessons to provide these outlets for the kids. And that's one thing about this is that a lot of these activities are really simple to be able to add
Mhm.
into almost any lesson that you're teaching. They're not very lesson specific, but it's
Mhm.
just providing these opportunities so that kids can have this outlet so that they can learn in this way. And the first one that I just think of is having centers available with just paper and pencils and
Mhm.
crayons or markers so that kids can just sketch and draw.
Mhm.
These are great activities for you to have, especially at the start of a class time or the end of a class time when you're kind of doing those transitions, where basically
Mhm.
you can just have a table set up and you can have the Bible open to your Bible story, whatever Bible story that you have, and then have maybe the teaching picture available
Mhm.
there. And you just ask the kids to take some time to draw. They just draw out what they see in the picture themselves. They think about the story, they think about the
Mhm.
colors, they can just spend some time just drawing out the story so that it
Mhm.
gives them time to sit and reflect and just have something that's very, focused and calming for them to do so that they can reflect on what they've learned about that particular story. The other thing is to have a center that's just available for writing. Have an
Mhm.
opportunity for the kids to write the story or to write what they think
Mhm.
about the story or write a life application that goes along with the story or just so that they can sit and just write out. And so again, you would just have paper, you would have pencils there, you would have prompts, maybe writing prompts,
Mhm.
especially if they're younger, to ask
Mhm.
them questions that they can write about the story. And so it just helps them to be able to sit quietly and to be able to write and to think as they sit. And, we talked too about how I feel like that a lot of reflective learners do like to scribble and draw and take notes and things because it just gives them something to do as they process and as they think.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've always enjoyed having is like a classroom journal. And
Mhm.
basically what this is just is having a spiral or, one of those little black and white, notebooks that you just have in the classroom. You date it for the particular Sunday and you just leave it open with a pencil and kids can just go and write anything that they want in it. They can write an activity that we've done. They can write what they think about the Bible story. They can write what they're going to be doing for the week, but it's literally just letting them work together to create a classroom journal as a memory for what they're doing that particular day. And it just gives kids an opportunity to sit and to reflect and to think about the activities that you've done and the lessons that you've learned and what everybody's doing that week.
That's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that because I don't think I've heard of that one before
Yeah.
because then kids can each contribute in whatever way they want to or don't want to.
Right. Yeah.
So I like that.
You can actually have thinking breaks in class. So what you can do is just have moments where you just have everybody freeze and you just give them a few minutes to think and you give them a prompt on what they need to think about, and then you can give
Mhm.
them opportunities to share what they were thinking after it's over. Like after you unfreeze everyone, you can ask for volunteers that want to share about what they thought of. And again, like I said, you're
Mhm.
giving them the prompts. It gives the classroom time to just kind of stop and freeze for a minute and just take a
Mhm.
beat and take a breath and to kind of think about maybe if you have just given them a really important life application for the story
Mhm.
or something really exciting has happened in the story and you want them to try to figure out what might be happening next. It's
Mhm.
just like where you just have this moment where maybe you have a little bell that you ring or a little thing that you click or something that you do where they know that they have to freeze and just think for a minute. And so I mentioned earlier about having centers in the classroom, especially if you're working with preschoolers. I love using centers. I know that I've had some people over the years tell me, oh, that's kind of an old fashioned or an outdated idea. But honestly, I think centers give you the opportunity to provide a lot of different activities for your kids and to be able to
Mhm.
keep them active and moving in the classroom. And so book centers are just usually one that I keep every single week, no matter what the story might be, where I provide just a little area in the corner where I have books that are laying there that have to do with the Bible story for the week. And then that way, kids that need that minute, maybe it's just been too much, there's been too much going on, or maybe they just need that minute, or they're in that mood that they just need to sit and think, they can just pick up the book. They can sit down in the center and they can just sit and look through the book, and they can have that quiet moment. And so anytime we can provide those little quiet areas in the classroom where kids can just take a little bit of a break if there's too much stimulation going on, it's a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
Another activity that I love doing with the kids is asking them to rewrite a story from a different point of view. So maybe you're telling them the Bible story of, Jonah being swallowed by the big fish. Well, have them do some thinking and write down what they think the fish is thinking during this entire story. It's not that they are rewriting what happens. It's just that they are providing a little more context on what they think people might be thinking in the story. I've often wondered, and we have that ability to kind of wonder, even though we don't know, but when we have these stories that we've heard so many times, I often think, what were the bystanders that we hear about in the story are actually thinking as they're watching things take place? Like, for example, the first one that came to my mind just now when I was thinking about it is the soldier who had his ear cut off
Oh, yeah.
by Peter. I just often wonder, what was he thinking in the middle of all of this? Like, oh, that's, like, wow, this is a lot to process. Not only did I lose my ear, but he also just healed me. There's, what is he thinking about Jesus? What do you think he saw? The soldiers at the cross, or, there's just so many of these stories that we have read and read and read so many times. And what the rewriting the story from a different point of view gives kids, older kids especially, the opportunity to do is to think a little bit more critically about the story itself and what's happening, so that they're processing it in a different way.
Yeah, because as we're talking about this, I was thinking about the two that you mentioned, that David and Goliath, like rewrite that story from the rock's point of view. Like,
right.
Laying on the ground, in a pouch, flying through the air.
See, I think
like
that's
the whale. Yeah, the whale.
It's like, wait, don't do it. I really do think that those details give them, and with the younger kids, even if you if you feel like that they can't write those stories if they're very young, that's a fun thing for them to act out or to say out loud or to talk about out loud. So it's just that, what do you think that these people are feeling, helps them connect to the story in a different way, but it also helps review details. So you're reviewing the stories as you're doing that. And so it's just a lot of fun. Another thing that I love to do are prayer walks. It's just always been a favorite activity of mine for preschoolers or for older kids, that according to the story, according to what we're learning, that we take those moments to maybe go outside and do a prayer walk, or to do a prayer walk through the building or through the classroom. I love doing the prayer centers, like to have little tables and activities where the kids go from table to table and do different activities that help them focus on prayer for particular things. And so I think that this helps our reflective learners, because we already talked about how they really do connect to spiritual practices. And we've already talked about journaling. Like, for them, being able to journal is a spiritual practice. Well, praying is a spiritual practice. And so for them to have time to pray for specific things, for them to have time to think through their prayers, to have the opportunity to write prayers, or, to maybe write out cards that they would send to other people. Like, I always enjoy doing like the cards for the senior adult classes, or cards for people that come to room in the inn, that might come to sleep at the church during the winter. Having kids write little prayers or little verses on cards for those reflective learners are going to really respond to those kinds of activities.
And I think too, even so, one of the things our church does, and that our churches in our area do, is prayer walking schools before the school year starts.
Right.
And so we were doing that at my husband's school. That was a school that our family went to, and several others went to from our church. And even our small kids, who were, 3, just barely 3 at that point, our son would walk around like we were walking around the outside of a building, stopping at each classroom, praying. And every time our son would say, "Dear God, thank you for our food. Amen." At each room. And then whenever we got to my husband's classroom, he said, "Dear God, thank you for daddy's food. Amen." So,
Oh,
even being so little, just barely 3 years old,
right,
he was participating in
right.
that prayer walk in a very
Mhm.
active way, and
Right,
using the language that he had,
right,
to be a part of that. So it was pretty
right.
cute.
That's that just, like, melts my
Uh,
heart. I love that so much. Well, and I
yes.
think that kids can understand prayer more than we think that they can,
Mhm.
and so we wanna
Mhm.
give them those opportunities and help them learn, how to pray and how to take time to think through, and that gives them the opportunity. And the thing I love about doing the prayer centers in the classroom too is it helps kids understand there's
Mhm.
different ways to pray. Like, praying
Mhm.
doesn't have to be you on your knees with your hands folded and your eyes closed. You can pray while you're writing, you can pray while you're doing an activity, you can, you talk
Mhm.
to God in all sorts of different ways. And so I think it's
Mhm.
important for us to help them to be able to do that.
We were just talking about how much we appreciated as adults the prayer stations. At the conference we went to recently, a children's
Right.
pastors conference, about how much we appreciated that as
Mhm.
adults, of
Mhm.
different ways to guide our prayer, different ideas about how to pray and what to pray about. And so introducing kids and giving kids that opportunity is super
Mhm.
valuable.
I think it's a great opportunity for our volunteers too, is to have a prayer walk
Amen.
in our children's ministry with our
Mhm.
volunteers with centers set up,
Yeah.
and they go to each classroom and they do something different. So I think that that's an opportunity
Mhm.
to help our volunteers learn how to pray so that they can teach their kids
Mhm.
how to pray. So
Amen.
I think doing times of Bible study in your Bible study class is a good opportunity for kids to learn how to do Bible study on their own. And so I
Mhm.
think providing little ways where you give them some prompts and things to do with their
Mhm.
Bibles, and to have a chance to write and to answer some questions or to look up some verses and to do that kind of thing. Anytime they have that
Mhm.
opportunity to do Bible journaling, to do Bible study, you
Mhm.
can give them, I love to like print off passages and let the kids, mark repeated words in different colors and to draw pictures along the side of the verses, just sort of
Mhm.
like, Bible journaling has become
Mhm.
kind of a big thing for adults to
Mhm.
do. And I think it's great when our kids get to do that as well,
Yeah.
because it just gives
Amen.
them the opportunity to study passages a little deeper. You're literally
Mhm.
teaching them how to do an inductive study when you're doing that. And so, but it also gives them a chance to be a little creative in their Bible study time, and it helps them to connect to the Bible verses a little bit better. I also really enjoy having kids make their own books. And
Mhm.
so giving them the pages and encouraging them with prompts to be able to create a book of the Bible story that you've learned that day, or maybe do a book of Bible verses. That's a
Mhm.
really great project for you to do for a month or for a unit, where they're making one book using each week's Bible verse, where they write it in their
Mhm.
book and then they illustrate it, so
Mhm.
that they're actually creating a book that they will walk away with at the end of whatever time period you've set for them to do, but they're actually making a book. And so that gives them a chance to really be reflective and really sit down and think through and make it creative and make it their own. And so I love making books. That's always a big activity, because you're also not only getting your writing, so you're getting verbal kids as well, and you're getting those visual kids with the artwork, and you're getting the reflective kids with, so, and it's an
Yeah.
active activity. So you hit a lot of the learning styles with just this
Mhm.
one activity, and it's something that they're taking home that they can share with their
Mhm.
parents. So they're carrying that forward to be able to teach the parents as well. So it's just, I think that's a very good activity to do with our kids. Also, when you're thinking about your reflective learners and how you can help them process the information of your story more, giving them problem solving questions is a
Mhm.
really great opportunity for them to make a life application with the Bible story that you're learning. And so it's asking them how they can take what they've learned through your Bible story that day and apply it to a situation in their lives. And this is where we might act out something, or we might have them
Mhm.
write something or draw something, or maybe talk about it with others to figure out, okay, if I have this situation, how can what I learned in this Bible story help me be able to figure out what I should do in my life if this happens to me. And so again, that's going to give your reflective learners an opportunity to really think through the story, but also make that application to their life. And then finally, one of the things that you want to really think about is the fact that these children are going to struggle with large groups more. So if you have these large group activities where you're all doing something very active in a very large group, reflective learners are going to feel a little more stress from that because it's a large group and it's very active. So you want to think through, it's not that they can't do group activities. It's just maybe better if they do smaller group activities where you might divide them into groups of 2 or 3, as opposed to trying to do something with the entire group all at one time. I think reflective learners have a lot to teach us. Reflective learners really slow us down to take the time to really process, to not give knee-jerk answers, to not think through things in a very shallow way, but to really think about life more deeply and to process it more carefully and to think about how things apply to our lives a lot better. And so they can just really bring so much joy and depth to a classroom. We just have to draw it out of them a little bit more to get them to be a part of it, because again, they're very content to do all of those things all by themselves. And so we just have to work a little harder to make them a part of our group. Well, as always, we thank you so very much for joining us today. We just appreciate that you've taken your time to spend with us. We hope that we have given you some helpful information, something for you to think about, something that you can use in your classroom, maybe some new activities that you can do. But we just want to encourage you where you are. We know that this time of year is so hectic with everything coming up for the summer, with the end of the school year. And so we are praying for you as you plan and as you prepare for your summer activities. If there's anything that we can do to help, if you have any questions, if there's a specific topic that you would like for us to cover, please don't hesitate to send us a note. Let us know. We would love to be able to provide an episode that would meet your needs where you are. We just appreciate you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.